I'm sitting on the steps of Bridgewater Junior Senior High School, where I attended 1982 to 1988, the actual steps. And you know, when the school board review first started in regards to Bridgewater High School and Parkview Education Center, I really sat on the outside thinking, you know, what's going to happen, what's going to transpire. And the more that I found out, the more that I spoke to the people that were involved in the process, the more I felt compelled to inform the citizens that live here in the community and our citizens that live abroad throughout the world that are alumni at BHS and past residents of our community to find out what is the truth. And let's start from the very beginning to find out what that truth is all about. The BHS Parkview merger has been a discussion at the board level for many years. This time was their best attempt at getting this accomplished. Creating an SOC with a facilitator handpicked by Superintendent Jeff Kanan, the direction of where this was headed, well, there were lots of questions to be answered. After a vote of 11-7, the SOC proceeded to make their recommendation to have BHS merge with Parkview, and after only 20 hours to discuss the matter, the SOC grew tired of debating and led to a vote after only 2 public meetings, even when 3 were scheduled. Well, from day one, you've essentially been engaged in this process of the possibility of losing our grade 10 to 12s at Bridgewater High School. You've lived here a long time, you've taught here in the system, and you've been one of our leaders in municipal government as a councilor, a deputy mayor, and now the mayor of town of Bridgewater. What's your first initial response to it, I guess, is?
Yeah, and I guess this is an opportunity to go back to the very beginning. But certainly, I'm not opposed to school reviews. I think in this day and age, we all go through an examination of how we're doing business. The town does, our departments do it. I think schools should do it. Look at how you're delivering your program. Is it a valid program? What are the challenges? So on. So I was not opposed to that. And I was at the meeting when the superintendent of schools presented his recommendation to the school board to review the Bridgewater family of schools and the Parkview family of schools, and I certainly viewed them as basically two reviews ongoing. And a comment was made by a board member there that I still go back to, which was, you know, we really need to engage the municipal government. So that would be the District of Lunenburg and the town of Bridgewater. And I'll just speak from the town's perspective, but we certainly have played a very, maybe not direct role, but certainly an interested role in education in our community. Provide a bursary every year at graduation, have done that for as long as I can remember. Certainly attend things that are going on in the school as much as we possibly can to support what's going on there, and take a great deal of pride in graduates from Bridgewater High School and what they're now doing, and in many cases the roles they're now playing in our community. So it was not necessarily the review that concerned me or raised any red flags. A flag did go up with the comment from the board member about consultation with the municipal governments, because quite frankly that has not happened in any kind of meaningful way to seek the input from municipal government. Certainly residents are going to call me, we're hearing things on the street. We represent the people in town of Bridgewater, so it seemed logical that we would be consulted during that process. You know, when the process started, we did write a letter to the school board, to the Minister of Education, to our local MLA, to the chairs of the SAC, indicating concerns that we had with the way the process was unfolding. One we expressed was there seemed to be a lack of information about meetings and what was happening and so on. So we raised that issue. We raised the issue that the community rep did not live in the town of Bridgewater, and we were concerned that if it's a community rep, it should be somebody that's living within the community that has a feel and an understanding for that community. And we were concerned with the transparency, that with the application already approved, construction already starting on Parkview, that perhaps there was not going to be a transparent analysis of the two families of schools. To their credit, the school board did meet with us, addressed each one from their perspective. We did resolve the advertise one. I learned very quickly that you got to turn on the notification button on your Facebook page or you won't get any notification. So without a doubt that was resolved. The community rep one was not resolved by the board. The rep that they chose decided not to continue to offer for personal reasons, and it was replaced by someone who does live in the community. But once again, there was no involvement, I don't believe, of our SACs or of town council in making suggestions about who that community rep might be. The transparency one still today concerns me, because it appears that as opposed to a review of the Bridgewater family of schools by an SOC for that family of schools and a review of the Parkview family of schools by an SOC group for that family of schools, we're all lumped together. And it appears to me that basically we're looking at resolving an issue that's been identified in the Parkview family of schools by making changes to the Bridgewater family of schools.
When the emphasis was on programming improvements, the real issue was declining enrollment at the 10 to 12 level at Parkview.
I don't blame the board, I don't blame the SOC, I don't blame schools. I'm just saying we're going through a process. We want to make sure that we've looked at all the options and that we're clear on what might happen with that option. So if you move the high school students to Parkview, if that's determined to be the best course of action, why? And then, well, what does that mean to Bridgewater Junior High? Where the students come from? The fact that it appeared from the meetings I was at that you can't look another model like a 9 to 12 model at Parkview. You can't look at rejigging the catchment areas right now. You can't include New Germany or Forest Heights or any of the other schools in the analysis. Then it seems we're cherry picking in a degree. We need to look at the total picture of where the issues are. So, you know, I have a lot of respect for the school board, the job they're doing. You know, it's a process that was developed by the provincial government. You know, and there's things within that process that concern me. I'll quote one: a local school review committee will conduct reviews for each group. So it would appear to me when I read that, so there should have been a school options committee or school review committee for SOC for the Parkview family, one for the Bridgewater family. They'll look at theirs and maybe come together if there's a need to do that. So, you know, I know it's perceived by some board members that we're attacking the board when it's not board. It's not the board process, it's the provincial government's. Well, I haven't heard a lot of board members jumping up and down saying this process is flawed.
Exactly.
We need to step back a bit. You know, I would tell the board members as anybody else. I'm making the same comments I make to the board. I'm making those to our MLA, and we communicated them to the minister as well. So we're not singling out the board. We're saying that whether it's the SOC, the board, the province, this process, we believe there's issues to it, and we need to slow the process down and make sure that we provide the due diligence that needs to be there to make the best decision for the students and for the board. I agree. There's a limited amount of money for education, so you want to make sure you're getting the biggest bang for your buck. But I just feel there's a lot of missing parts. There's a lot of questions that haven't been answered, and have a great deal of respect for our SOC members in the elementary school and BHS and the current community rep that have asked a lot of questions. And what's communicated back to me is answers weren't always provided, and there's still a lot of answers they're waiting for. So, you know, it's frustrating, and I think I certainly would encourage the board to perhaps have a sober second thought look at this and slow the process down and make sure you get all the consultations.
As the board was also showing savings at the board level, they were willing to overlook many of the issues that residents in the town of Bridgewater were going to be dealing with.
I've never taken a bus to school, ever taken a bus to school. It was always a walking thing for me, and I enjoyed that. And to me, that gave me the basis or foundation for a physical activity, which I still today enjoy, but my kids enjoy that as well. And when they asked me for a drive home when it's a beautiful day, I said, like guys walk. There's nothing wrong with walking. And you know what? That's part of the growing up process, and that's part of things that you will remember. I still remember walking to school and finding things and you know, enjoying that. You know, rarely did I ever get a drive to school, but that tedious bus ride every morning's got to be something that says to a kid in the morning, oh, I just don't want to go on that bus for 45 minutes when it takes, you know, 20 minutes or 10 minutes in town to walk to school. That is something, and the cost of that, and the emotional drain on a kid that lives in town that has to travel outside of town, when we actually, you know, have a great school in the middle of a town where my children can walk.
Talk about sports teams. Parkview and Bridgewater have dynamically different traditions. Some of those that are similar. Two of the issues, where do you find the gym time? But the second thing is, where do the kids, or what do the kids do that don't make the teams? Because they're going to have an overabundance of athletes in different, I mean, you were a basketball player, track athlete in Bridgewater High School. If you don't make, you think about the last guys that made your team.
Yeah.
Bridgewater wouldn't play basketball.
Didn't play. And that's the sad part about it, because both my kids are sports driven. My daughter is a very athletic volleyball player, and my son is a hockey player. And they enjoy that aspect, but if they didn't have that in their lives, I think that it'd be less fulfilling. Sports was a very big component of my life growing up. You and I both, baseball, basketball, anything that was out there, we tried to play. If I didn't have that in my life, that would make me a very, very different person. Somebody that I can't imagine, because sports was that important to me, and it gave me that component of belonging and a team atmosphere, right? I don't want my kids to be wallflowers or excluded, or, you know, feeling, I want them to feel part of this school, you know, the part of Bridgewater. If they were going to Bridgewater, I want to feel them part of it, because it's a great part of growing up.
Walking to school, smaller classroom sizes for more quality individual attention, opportunities to participate in extracurricular activities, scholarship and bursary opportunities, staying connected with the culture and history of the school were just a few of the topics that students, parents, and community members were greatly concerned about. When we asked Jeff Kanan or Jeff DeWolf to clearly explain their position, this is where we ended up every time.
Okay, well, there's a meeting tonight.
Yeah, I'll be there.
And, yeah, we need to work through the process before we can sit down and speak about it. I mean, it is the Department of Education's policy, and the board is trying to their best to follow that, and we just need to follow through on the process before we do anything else. It's been a very difficult time for everybody, and it's not easy. So at this time, they're going to respectfully decline your request to be in a video. Maybe at the end of the month, it might be different. Can certainly give us a call back. That's all I got for you.
So then I went to visit with individuals within the community that were not only transparent, they were also engaged in the process.
As a Town of Bridgewater representative throughout the review process, there was no concrete evidence indicating that the students would gain an improved education that is already being offered at Bridgewater Junior and Senior High School. In addition, it is clearly historically evident that Bridgewater and Junior Senior High School has offered an education base preparing their students to enter the workforce or continue their post-secondary education at the college and university level upon graduation.
Do you think this has been a transparent process?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Unless people went digging for information, as I did on the website, and read the minutes of all of the meetings, the public meetings and the SOC meetings, they're not really going to have a good inkling of what information or disinformation was given to the SOC to deal with. These are not educators or school board members who have some inkling of how the process works. Without that background, the information they were given was going to be very difficult to digest. And I had that sentiment expressed to me by those members, that they could not appreciate what they were being told. And the disinformation, misinformation, if you will, really bothered me.
What about, you talk about competition. When you add 265 students to a school, there's more competition for everything.
Yes.
The classes you want to select, the extracurricular activities you want to partake in, gym time, as you know, because you were a principal.
Yes.
So
That's
you
a
know
premium.
all of those things. And then the last one for graduates are scholarships and bursaries.
Scholarships and bursaries, because one of the things, they're not just looking at your marks, they're looking for a well-rounded student. That includes participation in student government. There's only going to be one student council president.
That's right.
You're now competing with several hundred more students for that position. They're going to be looking at your involvement in sports. 200 more kids competing for those positions. And yes, not all of them are athletes. It's not going to be 200.
Well, it's not
But
just
going to
athletics,
be-
you're talking about music
Exactly.
and clubs
Band
and organizations.
Clubs, absolutely. And yes, there may be more clubs and organizations that you can belong to in a school with a higher population. But I'm not convinced that that is true.
Schools like Bayview were an amalgamation of other community schools and created Bayview. Blue Nose Academy was the same way. They rebranded the whole school
Yes, yes.
so that all the students had an equal opportunity to come under that new brand. They're not doing this in this process, and I'm wondering why.
Because it's easier not to. Parkview, right from the time that it was built many years ago, was supposed to be the jewel in the crown. Nobody wants to change the name, the colors, the culture of that school, because you're then threatening the 600 plus who are there now by doing that. They don't want their school changed. They're very proud and very supportive of their school. They don't want that change. So you're looking at the good of the many outweighing the good of the few, and the few are our Bridgewater students. We're putting kids on buses who would normally walk. My granddaughter walks a mile to school.
That's right.
She's going to now get on a bus. And she's probably not going to get much gym time. She's certainly not going to be on a sports team. She will
She's
not
going to eat
make
lunch
it.
in a cafeteria.
Yep.
You know?
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
it's a
Yeah.
culture that
Yeah.
we're creating,
It's a culture that
which is
we're
not
creating.
conducive to having
That's
a healthy
right.
lifestyle.
And I mean, when you look at cost, people say, well, it's more effective. No. Bridgewater High School building is still going to be there, have to be heated, maintained, the landscaping has to be done. Same with Parkview, whether they have 600 or 850, heating at the plant, maintaining the plant will remain the same. Bringing Bridgewater into Parkview means you have to create more parking spaces. That's a cost. The parking spaces have to be maintained. That's an additional cost. Meanwhile, the Bridgewater building is still costing you the same. The only possible saving is if you knock a teacher or two off. What's that going to save you a year? Nothing in comparison to the total budget. It's a minimal amount and should not even be a factor, because it's not an appreciable amount that's going to make any difference really in the board's budget.
And the board has a mandate. They know where this is headed. I mean, if they evacuate 267 students in our schools, they're going to replace them with some students.
Absolutely.
And where are they going to come from?
And look at all the options. They can close Petite and Pence Bus all of those students at Bridgewater Elementary. If they opt to keep Bayview School open, which is a P3 school, very costly, they're going to want to keep that full. Why not bus Bridgewater over there? It's just a short bus ride. And one of the things that I became quite annoyed about in the public meetings was the premise that they could bus Bridgewater students to Parkview for nothing because they had buses going through town that were not full. But when I questioned why would we have buses not full, and was told we have to guarantee seats for those students who have the right to travel the bus from Back Center, Front Center, Rose Bay, Kingsburg, Riverport, you have to have those seats available. Then how can we fill them with Bridgewater students? If all of those students from those places decide to take the bus tomorrow, the bus will be full. Are you going to stop and tell my granddaughter that, so sorry, bus is full, you can't go to school today unless you trot out there and find your own way?
Now, you were at the third public meeting at Headville Academy.
Yes.
And we had a lot of people there that night that had different perspectives,
Yes.
different backgrounds. How did you feel when the vote was already cast by the SOC members that our voices really, and there was only 2 or 3 school board members out of the 8 that were there, that our voices really didn't matter after that session?
Yeah. I think the members of the SOC that I have spoken to since appreciated the public who spoke, because they not only recognized the passion, they recognized that people were speaking from a base of knowledge, that people had done their research, that people were able to say there is no valid reason for making this change. I think they have felt, right, many of them from the beginning, that they have been put in a position.
A no-win situation.
It's a no-win situation for them. They don't have the information they need to make this decision. The public input wasn't sufficient to allow them to gauge the public's reaction to this.
The town of Bridgewater itself has always been cooperative with the school board in regards to what you make available to students extracurricularly, like our Kinsman Field and many other amenities throughout the town that the town of Bridgewater maintains. Recently at the public meeting, we brought to the school board's attention that other communities were actually charging for those services, which I believe was alarming to all the communities, that $96,000 going to the town of Lunenburg for parking, septic, and the use of fields, when the town of Bridgewater is essentially charged nothing for those things, correct?
Well, yeah, there is a sewer bill that goes to Bridgewater High School and the elementary. Snow clearing, we plow the streets in front of the school, but that's the street in front of the school. But the school board has a contract with somebody to take snow off their site. Without a doubt, the one that really got everybody thinking is field usage. We have a current issue right now where it's our understanding that the rugby team from Parkview is not permitted to practice on their field because of potential damage. So they booked the Kinsman Field, which they don't pay for. We want youth to have access to that right now. But then whatever damage is caused, it's the general tax rate in the town of Bridgewater that will make the necessary repairs.
Your kids are going to be ending up, but if you look at the people in the town of Bridgewater specifically, and even in the municipality, when you choose to buy a home and you have children or plan on having children, I think one of the things that a taxpayer would consider is how close are you going to be to the school? Can you comment to that?
Yeah. I could do it personally.
right.
When my wife and I, we actually lived at Cotillion Place in the county. Loved it there. That was not an issue. We both were teaching in Bridgewater schools. I was in the junior senior high, my wife in the elementary school. All of a sudden, we had a daughter. She's 4 years old. What are we going to do? Well, she would go to Headville. That was not the issue. The issue was storm days. Not a lot of storm days in the town when I first started teaching, so it became, well, what do we do with her if there's a storm? This is going to be a nightmare. So we ended up, that was our rationale really for moving to town of Bridgewater. Tens of years later, it was certainly enjoying the town of Bridgewater. It's been very good for us, but the rationale was we moved to Bridgewater because we were teaching here and that's where our kids had to go to school. And I think, I have the utmost respect for the SOC members, and it's really unfortunate that at least some of them have been the brunt of criticism and phone calls and everything else. They're volunteers. You're elected to town council, whether you're the mayor or a member council. What comes with that position is criticism from outside about decisions you make. That's fair game. You're paid, you take the criticism. School board staff, same thing. School board members, same thing. You're paid, criticism comes with it. SOC members are volunteers from the community who want to do what's best for their kids and other kids. And they're the ones really taking the criticism to some degree, and that's really unfortunate. But you're also taking people who have full-time jobs and volunteer their hours and saying, now, you've got a ton of information to sift through and go through. You have questions you're asking. Well, they don't just shut down for 3 days so they can analyze all the material. So I think this process of any, utilizing that setup of an SOC, you have to provide them with ample time to analyze things, because their desire, I think all of them have a desire to make the best decision possible. And certainly I'm hearing from our SOC members, at least some of them, that they really felt it was difficult to make that really informed decision within the time frame and the information that they still felt they did not have. So we're sort of left saying, I can't support A or B because I can't get a clear picture of the rationale behind it or what the impetus is for it, other than $14 million in taxpayers' dollars to renovate one of the two schools. So, and that's where our frustration at council was, in the transparency. If we were having this discussion before any renovations to any schools, then you'd feel a lot better that you're actually looking at what's the best future decision for high school students in our area. Right now, certainly there's a feeling out there that the decision has already been made when the major retrofit of Parkview was granted. The students should be very clearly involved. Sometimes, I know when we met with the Students' Council, I said to the Deputy Mayor, sometimes I think these young kids have a greater understanding of the world of politics than some of us do. They understand what's water under the bridge. They understand when they feel that the decision has been made, and why are you even asking my opinion now? Ask me for my opinion at the beginning of the process, not at the end of it. People make decisions for other people, and I know that's part of government. You're elected to do that.
Of course.
But there's a cohort, if you like, that has not been even consulted for their opinions. I'm not saying that I should be able to dictate to the board what their answer is, but I believe on behalf of the residents and council, we should have a voice, and that voice should be entertained. I believe the student council, on behalf of the students, should have a voice and should be heard in the deliberations. At the end of the day, recommendation goes to the board will have to make a decision. I've lost votes on council, as you know.
That's right.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah, that's right.
As long as I got the opportunity to say, here's why I don't support that, then if the majority decide, no, we don't agree with you, we've had issues even during our budget, during our voting process.
That's democracy.
But that's the democracy. It's when people believe that their voice is not going to be heard or is not even going to be considered, that you run into all kinds of difficulties. And that, I think, certainly appears to me to be an issue during this current process.
Well, I think in elections, the majority of the individual or the candidate that receives the majority of votes is usually the one that's elected.
Yeah.
Correct? The three public meetings that took place in regards to public input, there was an overwhelming majority of people who were in favor of keeping BHS open to all the grades. I believe in all three of the public meetings, only one individual stood up and said that the movement to Parkview was a good idea. What comment you have to make in regards to having so many people that are concerned, and that information wasn't even taken into consideration, especially when you came to the third public meeting and the vote was already in at 11-7 vote.
And I think, without doubt, we can say, well, take the total population of Lunenburg County, how many were there, is that a good percentage? Yeah, and I know that's a valid concern, but I think people who are really interested, and I know the comment has been raised that this is more now becoming an emotional issue. Well, without a doubt, to a degree, yes, it is an emotional issue. But part of that emotion is driven by the fact that there's frustration that they can't get the answers to questions they want. Demonstrate that this is the best solution. Demonstrate things. And when during the process you have comments made about, and I read a comment that we're going to develop Parkview as the flagship school of the district. Well, that's sending a message then that there's only really one high school in the district. You hear the comment that, Bridgewater's a deplorable school. I taught in it, I subbed in it, I'm in it a lot,
Right.
and I think it's far from deplorable. For the community, a high school in the middle of the community is something we want to maintain. And I just have not heard anything that has sold me that moving the students from Bridgewater High School to Parkview solves an issue that Bridgewater has.
Right.
I don't think Bridgewater has an issue. I think we have a stable population. We offer a viable, the school offers a viable program. I think the graduates from that school have demonstrated time and time again in extracurricular areas, in academic areas, that they can hold their own with anybody. This is now developed into a we, they're good, we're bad, pitting people against one another.
That's not the case at all.
And that's not the way it should be. I don't blame the board, I don't blame the SOC, I don't blame schools. I'm just saying we're going through a process. We want to make sure that we've looked at all the options and that we're clear on what might happen with that option. So if you move the high school students to Parkview, if that's determined to be the best course of action, why? And then, well, what does that mean to Bridgewater Junior High, where the students come from? The fact that it appeared from the meetings I was at that you can't look another model like a 9 to 12 model at Parkview. You can't look at rejigging the catchment areas right now. You can't include New Germany or Forest Heights or any of the other schools in the analysis.